Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Linda Erkely, and I'm the interim director of the UCLA Longevity Center. And thank you for coming to our monthly webinar. Today, in keeping with the center's focus on living healthier and longer lives, we have a talk on global habits for 100 healthy years. And our presenter today is Aisha Mohammed. She is a clinical research coordinator with the Equity for Latinx Hispanic Healthy Aging Lab. And this is led by Dr. Mireya Dios Santos at the Mary S. Easton Center for Alzheimer's Research and Care at UCLA. Aisha holds a BA in psychology from the University of San Francisco with minors in neuroscience, health studies, business entrepreneurship, and innovation. And over the past 4 years, she's worked extensively with older adults in Alzheimer's disease and related dementias and brain health research. So she's passionate about sharing the knowledge she's gained to promote cognitive health and wellness across Los Angeles diverse communities. So welcome, Aisha. It's good to see you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to speak, and I thank you for the opportunity as well to share this information with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I know you're going to share your screen. And those of you, while you're viewing, feel free to chat in questions in the Q&A, and we'll answer them probably more towards the end of our presentation today, and we'll have a discussion as well. Okay, take it away, Aisha.
I'm just setting everything up.
There you go. Yeah, full
Yay.
screen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's nice to see all you guys, and thank you for the warm introduction, Dr. Erkley. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys global habits for 100 healthy years. Some main topics that we're going to be covering is we're going to be discussing what are centenarians, how does biology and lifestyle interplay when we think about healthy aging and longevity, as well as what are those practical things that we can do throughout our days and in our lives to get us to those 100 healthy years. So to start, I'll explain a little bit about what is a centenarian. So centenarians are individuals who live to 100 and beyond. Semi-super centenarians are those who get to reach 105. And then for the extra special individuals who reach 110 and above, we call them super centenarians. In first world countries, centenarians are relatively rare. About 1 in 5,000 people are able to reach age 100. 1 in 200,000 people get to 105, and 1 in 5 million get to call themselves a super centenarian at 110. With how rare they are growing though. So over the years, we've seen a steady increase in the amount of centenarians in our community. You guys may have heard stories in the news, or may even yourselves know someone who's reached 100 and beyond. And we're starting to see them a little bit more often, but we will say they are still relatively a rare group here in our community. A fun fact, though, is that the older you are, the healthier you've been. So, when we think about aging, when I think about aging as well, we always think that with age comes illness, that we'll get sicker with age, we start to slow down, it gets harder to do things. But something fascinating they found is that individuals who are centenarians have actually been able to live life relatively illness-free. So about 90% of centenarians do not experience any major illness into their early to late 90s. And then 15% of them actually escape illness. So 15% of centenarians have never experienced heart disease, cancer, dementia, which is quite amazing. And I think a testament to how they've lived their lifestyle as well as maybe genetics. So That's what we're going to be talking about next a little bit is what is it? What is allowing them, these individuals to live up into their later years without actually experiencing these major illnesses? What's allowing them to escape major illness? And that comes from a combination of biology and lifestyle. So 75% of longevity is attested to genetics. And I think when we think about genes, we're like, okay, if I have a gene for this illness, that means I'm going to get it. What's interesting, actually, and what we've seen in our research studying centenarians and older individuals, is that it's not that they lack bad genes, it's that they also have genes that are good genes or protecting them from some of the major effects of these bad genes. So these good genes can do things like lower inflammation, they can increase cell turnover, and then they can also help to slow progression of illness by boosting our immune systems. One really interesting story is that there's actually a researcher from Harvard University. Her name is Dr. Yakel Quiros, and she studied a family of individuals in Colombia who had high risk of early AD. So within this family, a lot of individuals were experiencing Alzheimer's disease as early as their late 30s, early 40s. What was interesting was that there was actually one member of this family, this woman, who did not actually have her Alzheimer's disease present until her late 60s, early 70s. And when they were doing testing and trying to understand this, it wasn't that she didn't have the gene related to early onset, it was that she also had other genes that were protecting her and shielding her from actually getting symptoms of Alzheimer's disease earlier on. So she was able to biologically delay it, which is quite fascinating. I would say myself, I never think about how genes are protecting us. I think especially when we're always thinking like, if I have the BRCA gene, I likely may get breast cancer, or if I have a POE3, which is a gene associated with Alzheimer's, I will likely get Alzheimer's. So knowing that there are a whole host of genes that are also protecting our body is really amazing. And it's interesting to see that how researchers are starting to discover these more and more every day. But genes aren't everything. Like I said, they make up 75% of cases when we think about longevity. But a lot of what leads to healthy longevity also is our lifestyle and our behaviors. So myself and our research lab here at UCLA, the Ella Lab, we are in collaboration with a research team at Boston University. And the whole goal of our research is to understand, okay, how do we as individuals reach centenarianism? What are the factors that allow us to age healthily? And the principal investigator, the lead of this project, his name is Dr. Tom Pearls at Boston University. He's a geriatrician. He's been running this study for decades. It's a very long study. And he created this framework called the Saging Framework. And the Saging Framework gives healthy habits or things to consider that'll help us get to those 100 healthy years. So things like getting proper sleep, having a positive attitude, including physical exercise by, getting active, getting moving in our community, being engaged, making sure that we're socializing with our families, our friends, our community, finding new hobbies and interests. Lifelong learning, a lot of us know, is very important to keep our brains actively engaged in these interests. Getting proper nutrition, as well as getting rid of smoking. These are the habits that he's coined, that we've learned from our research, that's going to improve your chances of getting to those 100 healthy years. What's interesting and what's really awesome is that as much as the research has shown that these habits throughout our lives are going to help improve our healthy aging and longevity, a lot of these habits have actually been integrated into communities for centuries, and they've been using it as a way, without really being able to put a name to it, to lead to their immense longevity. So that's the bulk of my presentation that we're going to discuss, and I'm so excited to hear from you guys as well, your thoughts. But we have, we're talking about global tips. So globally, we have these areas around the world called blue zones. And blue zones are areas where there are high concentrations of centenarians per capita compared to areas around them. And a lot of researchers have been looking at, okay, what are the things that are going on in these blue zones that are leading to this immense longevity of these communities that we can potentially apply to, our broader global universe, right? So that's the things that I'll be discussing and how they kind of really reflect what Dr. Pearls has been seeing in his research with the saging framework. So let's buckle up, everyone. We're not going very far though, but we are going to Loma Linda, very close to home. And Loma Linda is one of the blue zones, the only blue zone actually here in the United States. So what's interesting is that Loma Linda has a high concentration of individuals who identify as Seventh-day Adventists or who come from this religion of Seventh-day Adventists. And in that religion, a lot of the things they prioritize is, active engagement in community, high religiosity, but also prioritizing exercise as well as diet. And the diet component from Loma Linda is quite important. So many of these individuals have a vegetarian or a relatively like plant-based diet. And the centenarians from these communities have actually attested a lot of their longevity and their health to this diet. They try to avoid processed foods. They try to get as many whole grains, vegetables, fruits, things really from the land, right? That's how they prioritize their meals. And this kind of fits in with the whole idea of having nutritious meals and building nutritious meals in order for us to reach longevity and live our lives very healthily into our later years. So that's a very fun thing that's come out of Loma Linda. Next, we're hopping on a flight down to Costa Rica. So in Nagoya, Costa Rica, these individuals have attributed their sense of longevity to this concept of plan de vida. So plan de vida is the idea that you have a life's purpose and a life's mission. A lot of the older individuals in Costa Rica have actually said that that was the reason why they feel that they've been able to live such incredibly fulfilling long lives because of them working towards their plan de vida every day. So whether that's engaging in their work, farming, cropping, or it's taking care of children in the community or engaging with their family, every individual has found what their life purpose is and they've engaged with their community and stayed interested in the topic. So going back to saging, a lot of this community, what they've been doing for centuries really reflects what the research is saying right now. So yeah, very interesting things coming out of Costa Rica. And then next, we're going to be going all the way to Sardinia, Italy. So Sardinia is, again, another blue zone. So they have a high concentration of older adults here. And this city is quite an older city. So it's built on a very hilly terrain. And the way the buildings were created, there wasn't actually a lot of space for individuals to drive their cars in. So it's kind of pushed this community to live a more active lifestyle full of movement. In order for them to get to from point A to point B, they'll have to walk. So a lot of the centenarians from Sardinia have actually attributed that their longevity and aging has come from this active lifestyle that they live, from having to walk from point A to point B. And something really interesting that's been coming out of research right now is actually they've been seeing a huge relationship between muscle mass, especially in your thighs, and longevity. So it's quite interesting to think that these community members have been saying, like, I've been walking uphill, I've been having these passive exercise, and which ends up building muscles in your thighs. They've said it's been attributed to their longevity, and then the research is also reflecting that now currently as well. So very cool how generational activities and behaviors and lifestyles are actually manifesting in the research and showing that it's helping to improve their longevity. And lastly, we'll stop off at one of the other blue zones. So we're going all the way to Okinawa, Japan. Okinawa, Japan, I would say, is probably the most famous of all of these areas. But one of the concepts that their older community members attribute to their immense longevity is their socialization. So in Okinawa, Japan, a lot of the older adults practice this concept of moai, or social gathering. So they create intentional times to get together with their family members, to get together with other adults in their community, to kind of share ideas and to just reflect on what their days are, and create an intentional gathering time and gathering space. We said socialization was part of saging, getting engaged with your community, and what they've been doing for years is also reflecting the research that's saying this is what's going to get you there. Actively participating in your community, of being a member that's engaged and, working and making sure that you're socializing. So very cool things coming out of the Blue Zones. Um, but why is this important? So, as much as we'd like to think, and I said, older adult centenarians, a lot of them are escaping this illness. It's important to do research like this and to kind of learn about these healthy habits that are going to, get us to those later years, because a lot of what that does helps to prevent things like Alzheimer's disease as well. So Alzheimer's disease is on the rise. Millions of Americans are affected today. Millions more will be affected in the future. And a lot of times this has been attributed to both genetics as well as lifestyle factors. So the lifestyle factors we've discussed can help to prevent things like Alzheimer's, as well as other dementias. So again, I'll kind of take it back a little bit for those who may not know. Alzheimer's disease and dementias are a class of symptoms that impact the brain. So they impact memory, they impact thinking, and then other forms of dementia, Alzheimer's, can impact our mobility as well as we age. Aging is the biggest risk factor for developing Alzheimer's and dementias, but then there are things and activities, lifestyle choices, and behaviors that we can do throughout our life that's going to prevent or delay Alzheimer's disease. And a very interesting counterpoint to it is that on one side, I'm working on research where we're talking about these healthy habits and how they're going to get us to these later years. And on the other side, we're talking also about how these healthy habits can also modify, delay, or even prevent Alzheimer's disease. So this is a kind of visualization of different factors at different points in lifestyle, in a person's life, that can highly impact their risk for Alzheimer's disease. So we see in that, mid to late life, that things like isolation, a lack of physical activity, and smoking will increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease, right? But like we just discussed, things like being active, things like socializing, things like quitting smoking will get you not only to those later years, but getting you into those later years potentially without being impacted by diseases like Alzheimer's or other dementias. So quite fascinating to kind of see the duality of that. And then all of this is just, important. All this information that we learn comes from research, comes from history as well, but that we're learning more every day, right? So I wanted to share with you the project I'm working on. I had mentioned Dr. Tom Pearls before. He's the principal and guest investigator for this research project that we're doing in collaboration with Boston University. And the entire goal of this project is that we want to learn from centenarians. So if you are a centenarian, or if you know someone who's a centenarian, we want to hear their stories and what they attribute to their immense longevity as well, right? So the study can be done completely remotely. You wouldn't have to go in for any visits or anything. And it just comprises of doing simple tasks like answering questions about, your life and sharing your story, doing cognitive testing just so we can learn a little bit more about your memory and thinking. We'll also be collecting blood as well as other activity tracking just to learn a little bit more about how your biology might lead to immense longevity. And then for those who are interested, they can also participate in an MRI so we can get a scan of your brain and just see what the changes are and how it looks like at such a amazing age of 100 and beyond. So yeah. Thank you so much. And I'd love to like discuss any of the tips I've talked about or hear more of any of your inquiries. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share this information with you and your group.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Aisha. I had a question. So for your study, the neurocognitive testing is online, it's remote.
Yes, everything is done online, and the way the Boston University is the one who's handling the actual visits, the way they do it is they send all the equipment, they'll hop on a Zoom with you, and they'll go through all of the testing.
And did you say they follow people for how long?
Yes, so the visits are it'll only be a couple visits within 1 month, but you always have the option to do it every year and come back to track you over time. So it is a longitudinal study if you
Okay,
decide you'd like to also continue participation.
okay, great.
Yeah.
And I mean, definitely the number of centenarians is increasing worldwide, and it's increasing in the blue zones too, from what I understand. And the other
Mm.
piece of information that is coming out of the blue zones is that they eat, they don't stuff themselves,
No, no, no. Yeah.
right? You know how Americans, we supersize, or, Roman style, my relatives would eat and eat, get sick and eat some more. I mean, this is not what is most people follow in blue zones. They don't stuff themselves. They eat till they're about 80% full is what I understand.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a common practice. Aside from eating whole foods that they eat in moderation, right? They eat until they're mostly full and then that's when they stop. And then some of them actually even practice like fasting, I believe, where they'll take a day of, not eating and then going back to their normal routine or a form of intermittent fasting in a way, which I've seen also been, I've heard has been tied to longevity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One thing
super
about
cool.
intermittent fasting is that for older adults, you have to be careful though because of the loss of protein and muscle. So
Yes.
if you're not doing it, so everybody needs to know what, like, some personal information about, is this actually a good idea for you? And
Mhm.
some people it may work out well, but for other people, it may not, because if you're older and you lose muscle, and you're talking about how important muscle is to longevity, right? And I mean, so many things for maintaining your balance, right? Not becoming frail, not falling, that it's much harder to gain that muscle back when you're older as compared to when one is younger.
Mhm.
So
No,
these
I
are,
I completely understand. Yeah.
yeah. So these are personal things that one has to think about when you would make these lifestyle changes, right? Is
Mhm.
first of all, what's my health? What is my health status? What are my genetic risks for a disorder? And how can I lower my potentially lower my risk by countering it with more of a healthy lifestyle?
Exactly. And I always say like, you know your health best and also your physician knows your health best, right? So it's always good to get
Absolutely.
in contact with your physician before making any dramatic changes, especially when some of these habits we can integrate on our own without consulting, but especially if you are older, if you do have personal, health conditions that may impact your ability to include these habits into your daily life, it's always good to discuss. And, I feel like our healthcare system, if we advocate for ourselves, if we are very transparent about what we're interested in doing or adding, they're more than happy to help and create a plan that's sustainable for you and your own health.
Yeah, exactly. What we call that personalized or person-centered medicine,
Mhm.
right? And we're more and more, or precision medicine, more and more going in the direction towards precision medicine.
Yeah.
And speaking of your study, Lori asked, is there a link to the study site? Do you have an email that we could share with people?
Yes, there is a link. I have a study flyer that I can maybe share with your team. And if you guys would like to push it to your newsletter, that would be great. Or you're always welcome to reach out to me and I can facilitate that transition. I believe I can share my email in the chat if that helps.
Yeah, we can
Or
share it in the chat too.
yes, I'll share.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and you can always reach out to me. They're a wonderful team, and I'd love to, hear more about your health or it's a loved one's
Okay.
health next.
Yeah. Why don't we get that from you? This is in Boston, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And and then we'll send it out when we send out the link to when the website goes up.
absolutely. I think that'll be
Okay.
amazing.
Okay. Now, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and one is, which is a great question. Do you know the actual percent of centenarians in Loma Linda compared to the rest of the United States of the world?
I do not know the exact percent, but I do know that individuals in Loma Linda live about 9 to 11 years more than the average
More?
American.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't see anything specific on Loma Linda. I found that in general, in these blue zones, there are about 10 times the
Mhm.
number of centenarians in the blue zones compared to the United States or in industrialized countries.
Yes.
So that's a huge number
No, I
of them
definitely
living
think
longer. Yeah. Yeah.
Loma Linda is a very interesting case, like amongst all of the blue zones, because if you see the rest of them, they tend to be in more underdeveloped areas or community-oriented areas, as opposed to Loma Linda is like right in the middle of Riverside County. It's a large
It is.
suburb surrounded by huge cities. So there is something special about it. Like I said, a lot of what they attribute it to is the lifestyle attached to that Seventh-day Adventist uh,
Right.
like beliefs, right? Or values
Right.
that culture holds. But
Vegetarian diet, no alcohol, right?
exactly, yes. But another interesting thing, and it got me thinking, I didn't discuss this earlier, but Singapore is actually considered a emerging blue zone, and that would be the second most highly industrialized, very city-oriented community where we see this large growth of, individuals living 100 and plus in per capita, right? And a lot of what they attribute to it when we think of healthy lifestyle too, a lot of times our lifestyles are facilitated by the policies and larger systems that we have. But
Mhm.
individuals in Singapore actually they put a tax on food that's not good for you. So on highly processed foods, on anything with high fat, high sugar, they actually will charge you more for it. So it discourages the population from going towards those things. So just thinking about diet, I was like, that is quite interesting that other blue zones are also trying to figure out, okay, how do we maintain these like healthy lifestyle and healthy diet and nutrition?
Okay. Yes, thank you for that. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Diaz Santos is here on our in our webinar. She's the PI of the study in Los Angeles, and she has just put the Boston University website in the chat or in so I can move that if anybody needs me to move that to the chat. I think it's in the Q&A. So I'm going to put that in there
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Diaz.
right now. Thank you, Tio Santos. And let's see. Get this, send this to everyone. Okay. So there you go. We also had some questions about is any particular blue zone as far as like Okinawa. One of our viewers said that it's my understanding that the number of centenarians in Okinawa is decreasing due to the introduction of more fast food restaurants and processed foods.
That's really interesting. If that is the case, I'm not sure. That would make sense, I believe. I also have heard there is kind of a mass exodus in a way. of individuals leaving Okinawa. Just because there's more opportunities overseas in mainland Japan. I'm wondering if maybe some of it can also just be that their population in general is dwindling. But I wouldn't find it hard to believe that if they are introducing more fast foods into that community, that it may be decreasing the amount of centenarians just because, you're introducing a bit more of an unhealthy lifestyle with these more easily accessible foods that are, higher in fat, higher in carbohydrates.
Yes, in fact, we have our brain boot camp program, which
Mhm.
talks about the pillars of health, the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And in not only do we have a lifespan, and you have centenarians and people that super centenarians now, which is like new in the last 20, 30 years. But
Yes.
and then of course, people that live to the average age, depending on which country they live in, if it's industrialized, what their SES, situation is.
Mhm.
But one thing that we know is like there's also health span.
Mhm.
And health span is the number of healthy years that people live, which is about 9 years shorter than their actual lifespan. So this means that for many people, the last years of life are spent in poor health with chronic diseases. And these chronic diseases do have a genetic basis, but they also have a lifestyle basis to them too. So you're talking about cancer, heart disease, high cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes, right? And like you're talking about in the beginning of this talk, Aisha, that some of us are really lucky. Actually not in the us. Some people are very lucky to have longevity in their family. Like they have this combination of genes that help protect them from environmental toxins, help them, live longer because they have better immune systems, better DNA repair, all these things. But one way to possibly make up for those who aren't as lucky genetically is to engage in some of these healthy lifestyle behaviors. And two very important ones are not to eat processed food. And that's right. That is foods that are pre-prepared, come in boxes, fast food, because they have a lot of bad fats, a lot of bad carbs, and very high in salt. So, like that's one. And the other, there's actually about 6 things to do. And
Mhm.
you talked about social isolation in Okinawa, how they build in social connectivity. And these are part of these pillars of health that help close that gap. So not only, could you live longer, but you could live better longer.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is
Definitely.
in our power for many of us to do that.
It is, and I think I had said like 75% of 75% of longevity is attributed to genes, but there is that 25% that's lifestyle. And I'm a bit of a, neuroscience nerd a little bit. So I would love to like share. Hopefully it's not oversharing. But a lot of these habits, the reason why they are improving our longevity is that they contribute to something called neurogenesis. And neurogenesis is this idea of building more connections between our neurons and building stronger connections between our neurons. So they talk to one another, and that's how we move, that's how we think, that's how we are able to feel is by these neuronal connections, right? And by engaging in activities, I talked about saging, I talked about the blue zone. So things like socializing, things like being engaged in a new topic or learning something new, eating healthy diets, being active, all of this kind of builds our brain through neurogenesis. And what neurogenesis leads to is this concept of cognitive reserve. I hope I'm not rambling, but cognitive reserve is this idea. I always think of it as a bank account, right? Where it's like you're building your brain bank so that, if for some reason, you happen to be predisposed for something like Alzheimer's disease or another dementia, the way those work is that proteins start to eat away at these connections in your brain, right? So the bank that you build, you're also building resiliency in your brain by engaging in these activities so that it's not as hard of a hit if these proteins or if you are predisposed to these certain types of dementias. And that's how, these are so important because the activities we're doing, it's not simply like helping our physical body, I think we think about, but it's actually making those changes in our brain. It's rewiring our brain so that we are living healthier and we're having those health years later on into life.
Right. And we know that is part of that recipe as well
Exactly.
for neurogenesis, or at least for increasing certain proteins that are involved in neurogenesis.
Exactly.
So now one of our Q&A before, on some people sent in advances, what's the best thing to do if you're 80 years old?
If you're 80 years old, I would say, it's always depends on, what your lifestyle is currently and what might be missing when we think about it. We want to be able to balance everything, right? We want to have those aspects of socialization, making sure we're getting proper nutrition, making sure we're moving, making sure we're staying cognitively engaged. But my preference, I will say, later on in age is that, we've seen from a lot of news, a lot of individuals I've talked to, especially older adults, they say the biggest missing piece for them is that socialization aspect, is that they're just not sure, especially when their adult children kind of have their own lives, they may live further away from some of their friends that they grew up with or had throughout life. They're not sure about how do they make those connections and how do they socialize. And I think that's the biggest piece is at 80 years old is like finding ways to do that, whether it's going on a community walk and, I know it's always hard to jump the bullet and just say hi to strangers, but always saying, hi to someone, compliment others, to start a conversation. I know a lot of community centers and senior centers also host activities for older adults too, to bring them into kind of a protected space where they can engage and have that social aspect. So I'm all about the socialization in older age. So that's my recommendation if you're 80.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, the social media has been helpful with this. It's
Mhm,
not a substitute for, having a friend that you go out to coffee with or dinner, or somebody that you can call up,
mhm,
when you need to talk. But it's better than like having no contact, and it's a gateway to maybe joining organizations or clubs. So social media, is still considered helpful. I know that it's a double-edged sword, but it can
mhm.
definitely be helpful for people who are isolated.
Yeah.
Um, Another is volunteering.
Yeah.
And yeah, because volunteering has so many benefits, cognitively stimulating. You connect with people who are like-minded. So if you have a cause that you like, you will connect with others, and it's good for for the giver as much as it is good for the receiver. And there have been studies done um, on the benefits of like tutoring and volunteering for kids. And what they found was that the actual MRI scans of older adults volunteered, they engaged in a 1 year volunteer program, that they saw like improvement, meaning enlargement in certain brain areas, and cognitively too. People had some improvements, or at least sustained their cognitive abilities over that year. That was called the Experience Core study.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so we know that volunteering is good for both people, right? Or both parties, on the receiving end and on the giving end.
Mhm.
So
No,
that's
I can definitely.
something, yeah, to think about. Um, what about social media educational programs, Aisha? Do you have information on those?
I do a little bit. So that's actually quite interesting. I was I completely didn't mention this in my presentation, but something that I think is important is that there are a lot of resources out there. Especially I know like Alzheimer's Los Angeles has a program on their website that they talk about it. Same with Alzheimer's Association, just on what does it mean to like healthy age, and then how do we prevent cognitive diseases that come with aging. But a big part of my role here within our lab and at the center is that I actually also run an educational social media platform for our lab. So I'll give a shameless plug if you guys are ever interested in learning more about brain health, learning more about Alzheimer's prevention, early detection. We have a social media. It's at Ella Lab UCLA or at Ella UCLA, sorry, my bad, on both Instagram and Facebook. And there we really prioritize, we have what we call Longevity Mondays. So every Monday we give tips on, what are the things that we can do to get us to those 100 healthy years. And our program specifically is bilingual. So we have everything in both Spanish and English.
Wow, Dr. Diaz Santos, I know you're there. Do you have the link to that? And we definitely want to share it in the chat to
Mhm.
everyone. That would be amazing. That's at your fingertips. So this is very accessible. And that's another aspect of this that is so important is accessibility, right? Not everybody has the access. Like we're in Los Angeles, and there's so many ways that one can get involved. I know some people say, oh, it's a big impersonal city, but there's so many opportunities and ways to connect. Whereas
Mhm.
if you're isolated or you're living in an area without a lot of programs, you can be quite isolated. And even, whether it be from getting the proper medical care, from proper social connections. So this is something, and you can be isolated in a big city too
Mhm.
if you don't have good services that are nearby. So these are all things that, to be considered in trying to make these kinds of changes.
Mhm.
And in fact, Jesus, you brought up a very good point. You said, look, the media has helped spread knowledge about healthy living more widely than ever before. However, in my opinion, it remains challenging for many people in the United States to actually implement healthier habits in their daily lives. What do you think is missing when it comes to translating that knowledge into meaningful action?
Yeah. Oh wow, that's a loaded question, but I do
That is
agree.
$65,000 question in psychology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say from my understanding, I agree with Jesus. Like there is just so much information out there. And I think the first step, the thing that I always feel like is it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance when there's over information, right? So we live in an era where
What does that mean? Cognitive
cognitive
dissonance.
dissonance, like it's kind of hard to differentiate. We live with so much information, but we also know that online we see a lot of we know that not everything we see online is true, right? So trying to manage when one site says I should do this and another says I should do something else, it's like how do we go with that? I think it's kind of that whole idea of decision paralysis when they're overloaded with too much information. That's the first
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
The second thing is that as many resources, and you talked a little bit about it, Dr. Ercole, as there is in LA, the city hasn't done a very good job at advertising these programs or, bringing communities, especially those like in the safety net, those from marginalized backgrounds,
Right.
lower SES, these individuals who need it the most are never the ones who are able to actually become aware of these being available to them. So I think I can't fix all the problems or have all the ideas, but just conjecturing is that there does need to be more infrastructure and like how do we meet these communities where they're at? What does it take
Right.
for them to become aware of these programs? What resources do they actually need? And how can we tailor the existing programs to actually fit?
Right.
I think, a lot of the individuals who are building these programs, a lot of the individuals who are, sharing education about it, they take in their own perspectives. And there's only a certain type of group who really, always is able to get to these positions of power, you could say, where they're able to have make change, right? But because of, some of their life circumstances and how that may not directly reflect the experiences of the communities that need it the most, they're unable to really tailor their programs to actually meet those needs. And I think that's where that disconnect comes from, is that we have interpretations of, oh, we need to hit A, B, C, and D. We send it out to the communities and we're like, no one's using our program. And it's like, maybe they didn't know about the program, or maybe the program doesn't necessarily fulfill the need that they have, right? So yeah, trying
It's
to
when
really bridge the communication.
No, no, true. Sorry about that. It's
Oh,
when communities are very insulated and they don't get a lot of outside information. And also for Jesus, one of the thing is that with all this overwhelm and people try to do too much at once. I think about when every January 2nd at the gym, there's this influx of new people. And then they're gone in 6 weeks because they can't start the habit. They don't start the habit. So
mhm,
one of the things that can be done is number one, pick one thing to do. Like, what would you really like to do? What do you feel like you need the most? Is it that you don't exercise and you need to start walking? Is it that you're not eating right and you want to start changing that? It's probably two things, three things. I mean, certainly if you smoke, number one, get rid of it. That has to go.
mhm,
And that is a big job to quit smoking because tobacco is so addictive. But that would be a great focus. Like one thing, if you need to walk more, use goal setting. People usually set these goals that are way too big, way too lofty, and then they don't. Not only are they too big, they're not realistic. They
mhm,
don't actually say when they should be doing it. So they just say, I need to exercise more. That's my goal. Well, that's too vague. So people
mhm,
need to do much more specific goals. I'm going to walk. Not only I'm going to walk, which is great if you're an older adult, 6 to 8,000 steps a day. If you're younger, 8 to 10,000 steps. And a simple pedometer is, works great, or time it. I'm going to walk for 20 minutes. You don't
mhm,
have to spend oodles of money to figure out how much you walk. But say I'm going to walk Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, 8 a.m.
mhm.
for 20 minutes, or 5,000 steps, or 3,000 steps to begin.
Yeah.
So you build your goals, scaffold them. Don't focus on too many at a time. Same thing if you're trying to eliminate processed food or really get rid of it. Maybe you go out to eat 6 times a week, and that includes, lunches, things like that, not just dinner. You can say, okay, I'm going to go out to eat 3 times a week. You're going to already cut out fats, salts, processed foods by going out less, unless you're eating somewhere that's like really, really healthy. So that was a great question. And yes, the behavior changes is very important, but don't be overly, I won't say excited, but overly lofty in setting these goals because you won't meet them.
Yeah.
So, and when you're comfortable for a couple of weeks, what you're doing, then you can start to add on to that.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, like, I think based on what you said, the word that comes to mind is like sustainability. Like, how do we create a
Yes.
sustainable program? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, like, one mindset I've heard a lot of why New Year's resolutions never have like really fulfill themselves is people have lofty goals, but then people also become very hard on themselves when they don't meet the goals that they have. So being forgiving, if behavior change takes time, and along the way you're going to mess up here and there, but it's always about how consistently are you going to be showing up for yourself through that process that'll get you to having those behavior changes, right? Like being kind with yourself and then making sure you're setting those realistic goals, but then also, we were talking about information online and all this. There's like I said, it's always hard to discriminate what works and what doesn't, but there are aspects of these behaviors that have been heavily researched, and it's important to kind of leverage it to the best of your ability, right? The information available. So you talking about steps, and 10,000 is like the what everyone says for younger people, you're right, 7 to 8,000 for older adults. But I've heard, and there's been research on this, where actually taking steps right after your meals has
Mhm.
even more benefit to your body than like I believe it was like a 20-minute walk after your meal is equivalent to an hour walk any other time, right? In terms of what it's doing to your body. So picking those right times, so it'll lower your workout, but then also get the most benefit out of it, I think is also
Mhm.
good. Like just figuring out what is the best way to optimize these habits and behavior.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, Now we had another question. We had a couple of questions. I think we can put them together. These
Mhm.
are about dementia.
Okay.
And one question was, does dementia progress slowly? Or can it get worse in a short time? And the other one is, what are some remedies to help slow the development of dementia? And
Mhm.
then are there any effective drugs?
Okay. All right. I'll try to organize. So the first question about dementia progression, it really is dependent. We're learning about it every day, but because there are so many different types of dementias, and that a lot of times some people, it's we're trying to figure out, is it lifestyle, is it genetics? People have different attributions for where their dementia is. It really can go differently. Some individuals, it could take 5 to 10 years for them to fully go from a mild stage to a more severe stage, and some people, it can happen in a matter of a year, a matter of 2 years. So, unfortunately, I no clear answer on that. It really just depends. But in terms of things to remedies to prevent dementia as a whole, um, we're learning, but there's not really anything specifically that you can do that's going to be like, I won't get dementia if I do this, right? But I did discuss in my presentation those modifiable risk factors, and those are the things that we should pay attention to. So we've been talking about the behaviors for longevity. Again, I said on the opposite side, this research is also helping to potentially prevent or delay Alzheimer's
Right.
disease or other dementias, right? So, like I said, get rid of smoking, definitely increasing your socialization, making sure that we're getting physical activity, eating a nutritious diet, but paying attention to some of the more niche modifiable risk factors. So, one of those things on the list was actually hearing impairment in older age, and now they're thinking vision as well in older age can be linked with increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. So, making sure that if you're starting to feel like your vision is getting a little bit worse, or that your hearing it's getting harder to hear, that you bring these concerns up to your physician and try to see if there's a way to treat those. And then by inversely, they'll also potentially help to delay onset of Alzheimer's as well. And then in terms of once you get a diagnosis of dementia or any types of or Alzheimer's disease, um, we're learning new treatment therapies every day. There are a few new drugs that have come out in the past, I want to say 3 years. So they're very, very new. And these drugs that are on the market right now, their whole goal is that they help to clear certain proteins in the brain associated with these diseases. So I can't speak for other dementias, but for Alzheimer's specifically, there is a protein in the brain called amyloid beta. And amyloid beta, you can think of it as like a protein that kind of eats at these connections between your neurons, right? And the goal is that if you have less amyloid beta, right, in your brain, then hopefully it'll delay the onset of that, right, or delay the progression of the disease. So there are a few drugs for that, but they're like I said, they're not curing Alzheimer's disease. They may just be able to slow it down by a year or so.
Right.
But yeah, that we're learning every day. So maybe in the future, but at least for right now, unfortunately, we have not found the cure to Alzheimer's or dementia.
No, there's no cure, but there are some new drugs that can delay, they call disease modifying drugs, where they actually change the course of the disease. They're very expensive, they're not for everyone, they have side effects, and that definitely is a conversation to have with a neurologist,
Yeah.
if this is something that somebody would like to try.
Mhm.
And right now your lifestyle interventions are really your best bet to put off or delay onset, again, modifiable risk factors. But for example, there's a strong connection between, the heart and the brain. And if people are having circulatory problems in their body, in the heart, guess what? It's going on in the brain too. And these folks are at risk for stroke, and they're also at risk for developing amyloid.
Mhm.
So that's how, that's why we want to take care of all the things that contribute to brain disease. Big one is inflammation,
Mhm.
and then blood flow. And then other things are just genetic. There are toxins in the environment. So what we can try to do on the lifestyle end is reduce those known risk factors that will increase our risk. But I would say not just for brain disorders, but for heart disease, diabetes, all of these types of disease that are associated with inflammation, right? Immune dysfunction and
Mhm.
blood flow problems. Another factor is sleep. We don't sleep enough, and sleep is very important for clearing out amyloid in the brain. And so people that don't sleep, they sleep less than 7 hours a night, they have sleep apnea, for example, which is a medical condition. Those are things definitely are targets of intervention. Um, we just had one question. We've had a lot, but we had another question on alcohol and cancer. And this is a developing area that we have new information coming out about cancer risk. Aisha, do you have any comments on alcohol risk and cancer? We have like 30 seconds left.
No worries. It's not a space that I'm completely familiar with, the relationship between alcohol consumption and cancer. I will say, same with it's not nearly as bad as smoking for sure, but always reducing your alcohol consumption it's always going to be good for you across the board, right? Whether it's for your heart, whether it's for cancer risk, for your brain. We want to limit
Yeah,
that as much as possible. But I'll say if it's a personal concern, again, always, consult with your physician. They'll be more of an expert on this.
right. Talk to your doctor. I mean,
Mhm.
the advice on this, the opinions, medical opinion about alcohol is no amount is good for a person,
Mhm.
but the risk of getting certain types of cancers, whether it be throat, stomach, these breast in women, which is the highest cancer risk for alcohol consumption, do go up with the more people drink. So do not the kind of the advice now is if you haven't started drinking, don't start. And if you're drinking more than, one or two drinks a day, um, cut back. And, ultimately, we're still trying to work out, is it good for the brain? And if it is, and there's some evidence to suggest that it is, uh, we know in large amounts it's toxin for the brain. I've seen people with dementia from alcohol use, and the amnesia or the forgetfulness is so bad, and they don't recover from that. So there's some heart health associated with alcohol intake, not necessarily brain health, but heart health. But is it worth the other risks? Is kind of your big question. So there's going to be more data, I think, coming out on these relationships. But right now, the kind of the feeling is no amount is really good for you.
You have to agree.
Um, okay, so we're at 2:02. And we really appreciate you for being here today, for hanging in. And thank you for sending in your questions. And Aisha, thank you so much. You're looking at centenarians, though, right? You have to be over 100 to be in the study.
Yes,
Okay,
centenarians, but if anyone's nearing that age, we'll talk to them. This study's going
they'll
on.
wait. They'll wait for your birthday.
I'll wait for you. I'm very excited to hear your story, let me tell you.
Okay, so it's great.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for supporting the Longevity Center. Come visit us on our website to find out about our 2 upcoming webinars that we are going to be having. And thank you, Aisha, and good luck with your study.
Thank
And thank you for that information on the courses that you are offering. And thank you to our team, Didiana, Olivia, and Ernie Vasquez. So take care, everybody. We'll see you
Thank you.
next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.